Uh-oh. Okay, we'll start with this. This weekend, Golden Boy Promotions will be staging the second fight between William Zepeda and Tevin Farmer. Inexplicably, I'd say, why are they fighting again? William beat him. He beat him clear. I remember that Oscar De La Hoya, after the Haney versus Garcia fight, said that there was no reason to do a second fight between them, but you saw it fit to do a second fight between these two? The controversy and the potential money alone from Haney versus Garcia 2 is enough that a rematch is warranted, because if nothing else, you'll make more money in the second fight than you did in the first. But I remember, Oscar didn't want to do it.
You wanted to do this?
So it's curious as to why Golden Boy Promotions would have decided to stage a second fight between these two. The reason for it, at least I think the reason for it, is because Tevin Farmer said there was no anti-doping testing conducted before the fight or after the fight, even though it was part of the contract.
That constitutes a breach.
If what Tevin Farmer says is true, and it was all part of their initial agreement, that would leave Golden Boy Promotions vulnerable to a lawsuit for a breach of contract, and thus, in order to avoid all of that, they're giving Tevin another crack at the apple to get him to simmer down.
That's why I think they're fighting again.
But I don't expect the rematch to go any different than the first fight did. In the first fight, William Zepeda clearly outlanded Tevin Farmer outside of a knockdown.
Tevin did score a knockdown, but it was a flash knockdown. William Zepeda popped right up. His legs weren't spaghetti, they weren't jelly, they were still under him, and he got back on the saddle.
Got back to outworking, outlanding Tevin Farmer. What I expect him to do again this weekend. They're going head-to-head with Top Rank this weekend. They're going head-to-head with the Mayor versus Ryan rematch.
That's the theme for this weekend. Repeat or revenge.
So being honest, of this weekend's rematches, I think there's more of a precedent for Mayor versus Ryan than Zepeda versus Farmer. And this is supposed to be for William Zepeda's interim title, his WBC interim title that affords him a direct shot at Shakur S. Stevenson.
Not that he wants it.
Remember that Turkey LL Sheik wanted to put William and Shakur in the ring with each other as far back as late last year, and William was supposedly injured.
I don't believe that bullshit.
Not going to sugarcoat it either. Put simply, I think that Golden Boy Promotions doesn't want to put William Zepeda in the ring with Shakur. But the question is, if you don't want to do that fight, what fight do you want to do? That is, who's William going to fight for a title?
You're not going to get Javante. He's busy with Lamont Roach and that rematch.
You don't seem to want Shakur, and if you don't want a light-punching economic Shakur Stevenson, I doubt you want a hard-punching Keyshawn Davis.
I don't think they want that fight either.
They don't have a direct shot at the red belt, Vasily Lomachenko's title. Vasily Lomachenko, who's contemplating retirement. Meanwhile, an IBF eliminator is set to go down to crown his next mandatory challenger between Raymond Muratalla and Zaur Abdullayev. Thus, you gotta wonder, who's William gonna fight for a title? Who's William gonna fight for a belt? Because there are no belts of opportunity here. No vacant titles lying around.
I don't know. Maybe they're going to do with him what they've been doing for years now with Bektemir Melenkuziev. Keep busy fight after keep busy fight, aimlessly.
In no particular direction, no trajectory for the boxer's career, just somebody to fill the cards with. That's how they're doing him. Maybe that's what they're going to do with William for the foreseeable future until the belt situation becomes more negotiable.
Maybe, because you're not going to tell me that we needed another Tevin Farmer fighter, that they're doing it due to popular demand. Who was demanding this?
If nothing else, the virtue of the fight for William is it gives him the chance to get back out there, stay busy, stay active, and make some money in what is a winnable fight. We know it's winnable because he already beat this guy.
And I think he's going to beat him again this weekend.
Maybe he stops him this time because their initial meeting was scheduled for 10 rounds, where this weekend's rematch is now scheduled for 12. More time to punch up on Tevin Farmer.
Elsewhere in the division, there seems to be an effort to put Keyshawn Davis in the ring with Edwin De Los Santos for a fight that is almost ready.
The next challenger for the recently minted WBO lightweight champion Keyshawn Davis has surfaced. Sampson boxing chief Samson Lewkowicz said ongoing deals and discussions with rival promoter Top Rank led Edwin De Los Santos, the lightweight contender he promotes, to emerge as Davis's most worthy challenger. We have a very good relationship with Top Rank, Lewkowicz told the media on Saturday. A couple of my fighters will fight. We had no problem making the Inui versus Cardenas fight on May 4th, so this is one. Now comes Edwin De Los Santos with Davis, God willing, we hope. He also added, there will be no issue to make a fight between Xander Zayas and Sebastian Fundora. The only thing is, things in boxing change, not every day, but every minute. De Los Santos, 16-2 with 14 KOs, has been idle since his November 2023 snoozer and unanimous decision loss to Shakur Stevenson for the vacant WBC lightweight title. The fight headlined a top-ranked show in Vegas on Formula One weekend, and De Los Santos' 40 landed punches were the fewest ever in a 12-round fight at the time in CompuBox history. Stevenson landed just 65 punches in the fight as he was dealing with a shoulder injury.
Context is key. Those are very low numbers for guys that small. You're talking about 135-pound fighters. You're talking about lightweights where, historically, guys in those divisions throw punches in bunches. Think Bobby Chacon versus Rafael Limon.
Their two fights, their two wars. Think about the work rate of a Roberto Duran in his prime.
And that was in 15 rounders.
So that when you glance over at the postmodern era's version of a lightweight, these modern lightweights are far too economic, a byproduct of the Mayweather era and all of the Mayweather clones that it spawned, thinking that less is more?
Not always, and you don't need a history lesson to know that Shakur Stevenson laid an egg that night.
That night against Edwin De Los Santos. The best win of Edwin, the 25-year-old Dominican De Los Santos' career, came against the then undefeated upstart Jose Valenzuela in a third-round stoppage back in 2022. De Los Santos is ranked number 13 by the WBO and is not currently rated in the top 10 at 135 pounds by Ring Magazine.
Why would he be? He sat out all of last year.
Keyshawn Davis, 13-0 with 9 KOs, a 2020 U.S. Olympian silver medalist, last fought in February and knocked out Denis Beranchyk inside 4 rounds in his first world title fight. Davis had a standout 2024 campaign, knocking out Jose Pedraza and Gustavo Lemos and notching a dominant decision win against Miguel Madueño.
Perhaps Top Rank can succeed with Keyshawn Davis where in some ways they failed with Shakur. It's not that they didn't promote him, and it's not that they didn't push him, it's that Shakur Stevenson's base style just isn't fan-friendly, and there's very little that they can do about that.
They honored the contract, they gave him a big guaranteed purse every time he got out there, and they promoted his fights, they did their best. But at the end of the day, if the guy's got a boring style, he's got a boring style. They can't get in there and liven things up for him.
He's a pure boxer. What are you going to do? Where Keyshawn Davis is a boxer-puncher. And in a very general sense, boxer-punchers have more of a propensity towards action and towards knockouts.
You can see that in the way that they fight. Whether it's a prime Miguel Cotto in his heyday, or a Gennady Golovkin, often mistaken for a pressure guy.
Well, he had a pressure guy's volume, but he had a boxer-puncher's fundamentals and a boxer-puncher's skill set.
Boxer-punches, in a very general sense, make for more fan-friendly fights that are easier to digest for the hardcore boxing fan and the casuals alike.
Keyshawn Davis is a boxer-puncher, a talented one.
Now, under these circumstances, I wouldn't go shouting it from the rooftops that Keyshawn Davis might do to Edwin De Los Santos what he just did to Denis Beranchyk and what he did to Gustavo Lemos before that, because context is key. Edwin hasn't fought in over a year.
Hasn't been under the hot lights in over a year, hasn't had to make weight in over a year, and he's coming off a loss. Under more favorable circumstances, I would still pick Keyshawn to knock out Edwin De Los Santos, but these circumstances just puts it over the top.
Just makes it more obvious what's going to happen, though still interesting, because Edwin De Los Santos can punch. He can punch, he has power, at least enough to keep Shakur Stevenson on the move and keep his guns holstered.
But Shakur doesn't have the firepower that Keyshawn Davis has, doesn't have the firepower or the penchant for violence. So I would go with Keyshawn to win this fight, and win this fight by way of knockout. The virtue of it is they're getting him back out there in a jiffy. His last fight only lasted 4 rounds.
I like the turnaround. This affords him the opportunity to get back out there in a jiffy. Maybe he can have a 3rd fight this year if he wins this one, or a 4th one. They need to do more to keep these young fighters active.
This 2-fight-a-year schedule is not conducive towards maintaining a young fighter's momentum to make them a household name.
Fighters in the previous era were a lot more well-known among more households because they fought more often. So they need to do that with this next generation of young guys. If you want to get back to the glory days of boxing in America, fighters need to be fighting a minimum of 3 fights per year. Maybe 2 easy ones and 1 big one.
Keyshawn beats this guy.
What's surprising is how bad Edwin De Los Santos' haircuts are, given that he's a Dominican national. Dominican barbers are some of the best barbers in the world, but this guy's hair,
You serious?
it's like a patchy lawn that hasn't been mowed evenly. In any event, I like the fight, though you do have to mitigate how much credit you give Keyshawn for this win.
Back over to something else that Sampson Lewkowicz said. He said there will be no issue to make a fight with Xander Zayas versus Sebastian Fundora. The only thing is, things in boxing change, not every day, but every minute.
And that's what he said over the weekend. Fast forward to Monday, and what he just told veteran boxing scribe Lance Pugmire, I just spoke to Sampson Boxing. They will comply with the WBO's mandate for Fundora versus Zayas and expect a July or August fight date.
Oh, well, that's good news.
So we get Keyshawn Davis versus Edwin De Los Santos potentially in early June, then Fundora versus Zayas in either July or August.
The caveat for Xander is that if you're doing a fight in either July or August, you can't schedule it parallel to the Puerto Rican Day Parade in New York City. I believe that goes down in June.
And I believe that was the initial plan for Xander, to align his fights in tandem with that parade. The other danger is, you hold off on doing that, and what if the fight falls apart? I don't believe most of what comes out of Sampson Lukowicz's mouth, but one thing he said that's true is things in boxing change, not every day, but every minute. So where a fight might look promising today, it could fall apart tomorrow. Remember, we were under the impression that Canelo was going to fight Jake Paul for all of 15 seconds, and that quickly changed.
We were under the impression that there was a rift between Canelo and Turki El Sheikh, and that lasted all of 15 seconds.
Thus, while things are looking promising for a Fundora versus Zayas fight, I have to see it to believe it, because a lot can happen between now and July or August that could ruin this fight and cause it to fall apart. The WBO ordered this thing this past weekend, and where initially I thought that they'd have 120 days, they've given them 20 days to reach a deal. 20, or it goes to a purse bid.
It's a lot less than I initially thought.
But if things are rocking and rolling, and the wheels are already in motion for this fight, it's good news for everybody. It's good news for me, it's good news for you, it's good news for Xander to be able to win the title or titles from the reigning champion instead of just getting an email title, a title emailed to you.
This is good.
Being honest, I didn't think it was going to happen, and I said as much not but 1 or 2 videos ago. On that kind of time frame to do a deal with a Sampson Lewkowicz fighter,
Yeesh.
you know, it's different with an Edwin De Los Santos, another one of Sampson's boys. He's expendable, Edwin De Los Santos. You know, you're not going to turn this guy into a superstar. You're not going to turn him into a big ticket seller. So the most you can do is rent him out to a promoter that's willing to pay him and, in effect, pay you.
It's best use for a guy like that because he can't main event his own shows. He can't headline his own shows. You'd be pouring money down the drain trying to do that. The best you can do with this guy is rent him out.
And it's not like he has a belt. It's not like he has two belts like Sebastian Fundora, which is what makes this surprising, that Sebastian actually has something to lose.
Sampson's gonna do this fight?
We'll see. I like Xander Zayas to win a points decision if and when it goes down. I've already seen a lot of boxing fans taking sides. Some feel that Sebastian Fundora has too much experience and too much firepower for a light punching Xander Zayas.
I will agree that I think Sebastian punches harder than Xander, but I don't think he's a better boxer. Defensively, there's a lot to be desired when it comes to Sebastian. And given that Xander's got a bit of size, perhaps not as much as Sebastian.
But he's not a little guy. He's got some height, some length, and some speed of his own, all coming together to where I think he can slip past the long jab of Sebastian Fundora and get off punches mid-range to inside.
Even though he doesn't have much pop, he does have speed and he is defensively responsible. You have to watch him when he's letting go of 2 to 3 punches.
Look at where the opposite hand is whenever he's letting go of a shot. He knows how to take care of himself. Better, I think, than Sebastian Fundora within close quarters.
Sebastian sacrifices defense for offense within close quarters. That's why he got caught by Brian Mendoza.
That's how he got knocked out. So in the crawl space, within close quarters, I think Xander Zayas will have the edge, and that's where I think he beats Sebastian Fundora. The assignment for Xander is closing the distance, slipping the jab, getting in close on Sebastian, and letting punches go. Whereas for Sebastian, he has to try to maintain distance.
And I don't think he does a good enough job of doing that.
He's got the jab and he's working on it. You can see that, but I think Sebastian holds his feet a bit too much when he's hanging back. It's not enough to just stick the jab out there.
That's why Tim Tszyu kept catching him.
Because Sebastian holds his feet a bit too much when he's hanging back and trying to stay behind the jab. He's not the most graceful and not the most dynamic mover. I think that Xander is a bit more dynamic and swift in that department. And I think he'll be able to get off. He'll be able to land good shots, hard shots on Sebastian. I like Xander to win a points decision.
You really think this fight is gonna happen?
I don't know. All I know is that he's not a big ticket seller, even though he has 2 alphabet titles. If you looked out into the crowd of this past weekend's fight, there were a lot of empty seats. There were a lot of dark spots.
You figure that if you're gonna make any money off of this kid, now is the time.
He's got a mandatory breathing down his neck, and you could always surrender the brown belt to him. You could always surrender the title.
You've still got the green one, but does that make you any money?
Maybe for Sampson, what it boils down to is it's about time he cashed in on Sebastian Fundora, because I don't think he has yet. The kid's a good kid.
He's a unified champion, but I don't think Sampson's making any money off of him.
That is any real money. He just doesn't seem like a guy who's going to go on to become a big box office draw or a big ticket seller.
Now, maybe if he beats Xander in New York in front of a lot of people, maybe then he can.
Maybe. And maybe that's what the logic is. Maybe that's why Sampson seems receptive to this fight, and he's going to go through with it, where I thought they were going to chuck the brown belt.
I'm glad they're not, because I'd rather see a fight
than be right about another overprotective manager, overprotective promoter. I'd rather see a fight
than be right.